Good day, fellow vintage collectors. My name is Brad of White Sox Cardboard, and today I'm doing a video response post for Mark's Dodgers cards. He recently reached 330 subscribers. Congratulations, Mark. And had failed to, I guess, maybe had thought about doing VR for 300, but kind of was a little bit late and ended up doing it for 330. So here's my submission. It's about the Hall of Very Good of your favorite team. So I'll have three cards that I'm going to show, and look forward to sharing them. I didn't choose any of the more recent Hall of Very Good from the Chicago White Sox. They have a lot of their Hall of Very Good players have made it into the Hall of Fame recently. Manny Minoso, Harold Baines, Dick Allen just recently. Some of them have been taken off the table. I think in more recent years, you could add Mark Burley and Paul Konerko to the list of the Hall of Very Good. Neither of whom I think probably merit being in the Hall of Fame, but both of whom I think merit being discussed and maybe getting a few votes. But I don't have any cards of theirs. I haven't really gone into that early 2000s period of collecting just yet. I'm only barely dabbling in the 80s and 90s, and mostly still sticking with the 50s and 60s. So I'm going to stick with the 50s and 60s in this submission, and I've got three Hall of Very Good White Sox players to share. The first one is Billy Pierce. Billy Pierce has a career WAR of 53 and definitely has gotten some discussion for election to the Hall of Fame. I think it was kind of a more healthy debate in maybe the 80s and 90s. I think that debate has died down, and his opportunity to be enshrined is probably past. And that's not the end of the world. I'm not sure that he warrants being in the Hall of Fame, but he had quite an impressive career, including I think 12 seasons, or it was 11 seasons with 12 wins or more. He won 20 games twice in 1956 and 1957. Here I'm showing his 1952 Bowman card in PSA 5. In 1952 was he really came onto the scene with one of his definitely his best season to date. He won 15 games that year with a WAR of 7.3 and an ERA of 2.57. He also pitched the most innings of his career up to that point with 255, and earned MVP votes for the first time in his career. This was before the Cy Young Award was awarded. And so 1952 was a good year for him, one that kids collecting 52 Bowmans would have kind of taken notice, I think, probably that summer, as he was putting together a really good season. However, I want to focus on his 1955 season rather, because it's really interesting. He led the league with a 1.97 ERA that year, and he had also led the league with a 7.0 WAR, a 200 ERA plus, a 2.83 FIP, and a 1.099 WHIP. He made the All-Star team and earned MVP votes, getting 18th place. But he only won 15 games. And so he started 26 games. He won 15. He lost 10. And the White Sox that year were 91 and 63. So they had a winning percentage of .591. And Billy Pierce had a winning percentage of exactly 600. Just, not even a full percentage point above the team average, despite leading the league in all those categories. So what happened? Essentially what happened is he lost 4 games by a score of 1-0. He went all of July giving up either 1 or 0 runs in every single one of his 7 appearances. I think that was only 5 starts and 2 relief appearances where he got the save. But 2 of those 1-run games in July were losses, and then he had 1 before that and 1 after that. So a pretty hard luck season for Billy Pierce in 1955. Had he gotten the benefit of the quality of his pitching in terms of won-loss record, I bet he would have been a little bit higher on the MVP voting. And who knows, maybe that would have put him over the edge for Hall of Fame consideration. But it was not to be. I do have one really well done and short video from a fan who believes he should be in the Hall of Fame. So let's take a look at that.
Billy Pierce was the American League's winningest left-handed pitcher of the 1950s. He was signed by the Tigers as a 17-year-old for $15,000. The seven-time All-Star made his first big league appearance for the Tigers in 1945 at the age of 18. And he would also receive a World Series ring that same year. He was a two-time 20-game winner with 211 career wins and an ERA of 3.27 and a 53.4 WAR with 193 complete games. And he also led the American League in complete games for 3 straight seasons. In 1955, he led the American League with a 1.97 ERA and an ERA plus of 200. And in one of his last great shining moments, he pitched the Giants to the World Series in 1962. He would square off against the great Sandy Koufax in the first game of a 3-game playoff series against the Dodgers. He pitched a complete game shutout in Game 1, and then on 2 days rest, came back to get the save in Game 3. He was known to be one of the nicest guys in all of baseball, and I think should be in the Hall of Fame.
So, well done video there. My only sort of nitpicking with it is it kind of glossed over the fact that Billy Pierce was a White Sox lifer. Yes, he came up with the Detroit Tigers in 1945 and then went back down to their minor league system and was with them for a few games in 1948. And yes, he ended his career with the San Francisco Giants on a strong note, but in between he pitched 13 seasons for the White Sox. He's actually the wins leader in White Sox history post-war. He's got, checking my notes here, 186 wins for the White Sox, and that is the most of any player after the 1945, after the Second World War. There are 3 pitchers, Ted Lyons, Red Faber, and Ed Walsh, who have more wins for the White Sox, but they were all pre-war pitchers. So Billy Pierce, Hall of Very Good. Definitely a strong selection. The next player on my list, let's do a little trivia. Can anybody name the player who has the most wins in Major League history, not named Roger Clemens, and is not in the Hall of Fame? It's Tommy John. Tommy John. 1965 Topps card here, PSA 7. Tommy John has 288 career wins. That is the most of any pitcher not in the Hall of Fame, not named Roger Clemens. Roger Clemens is not in the Hall of Fame for reasons other than, obviously, his on-the-mound accomplishments. Tommy John has no problems in terms of off-the-mound issues, and in fact, quite the opposite. He was the namesake of the Tommy John surgery, which it seems like is, at this point, a rite of passage for any player who wants to pitch in the major leagues. And so I think, unlike Billy Pierce, I think there's no good explanation for why Tommy John is not in the Hall of Fame. You could put him in as a player, for sure, with 288 wins and 26 seasons. You could put him in, I think, as a pioneer. The pioneer and executive, they kind of go hand in hand. A lot of people are in the Hall of Fame as pioneer executives. I actually looked it up for the purposes of this submission, and I think there are actually only 2 individuals in the Hall of Fame just as pioneers, and they are Alexander Cartwright, who was, I guess, involved in the New York Knickerbocker Baseball Club in the 1840s, a pre-Civil War sort of contributor to the development of the game of baseball. And then a gentleman named Henry Chadwick, an English writer that's like from England writer who had a hand in kind of describing the game of baseball for American readers, also back in the middle of the 19th century. As far as I can tell, those are the only 2 individuals who are in the Hall of Fame purely as pioneers of the game. But I think you could make a credible argument that Tommy John ought to be added to that list if he's not worthy of being in as a player. I think there's a good argument to be made that he is worthy of being in as a player, as his 288 wins can attest to. Some other accomplishments include 320 plus win seasons, Let me just count up the number of 10-win seasons he had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 10 or more win seasons. He made the All-Star team a handful of times, got some Cy Young votes. He played for a lot of teams, but he played his highest WAR for a team was with the Chicago White Sox. He played for the White Sox between 1965 and 1971. So some of his stronger years and some of his pre-surgery years. He played more seasons for the New York Yankees, but those included the last seasons of his career, and some of those were fairly weak seasons. But what I just think is remarkable about Tommy John is the fact that he is such a pioneer in terms of the surgery that has really come to define pitchers. I mean, it's almost like you can't be a bona fide pitcher until you've cleared that Tommy John hurdle, because if you haven't cleared the Tommy John hurdle, nobody knows when the Tommy John surgery is going to come. And even when you've cleared it once, you might have to have it again. So Tommy John was obviously the first professional pitcher to have this surgery, and it was no small thing. I mean, it wasn't just like these days, of course, it makes news every time an important pitcher needs Tommy John surgery, but it's not as if this is a new procedure and they're undertaking an unknown risk like Tommy John did. He was a pioneer of the surgery, and thus the way that the game is pitched now, a pioneer of the game. And so I think there's a very strong argument that Tommy John should be in the Hall of Fame. I think there's a good chance that he will at some point be voted into the Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee, but he's not yet, so he's still in the Hall of Very Good. And I, in preparing for this, stumbled across a YouTube video that really talks in great detail about the Tommy John surgery and his role in it, and I think it's an excellent watch, so I'm going to play it for you here.
If you're watching this network and you hear the name Tommy John, there's a very good chance you immediately think of the surgery that is a staple of the pitching industry. But it's easy to forget about the 26 big league seasons and the 288 wins. 50 years ago today, Tommy John put his faith in a trailblazing doctor and also put his determination to pitch again to the ultimate test. What followed changed the course of baseball history forever. A name is part of our identity. But what happens when that name no longer belongs exclusively to you, or ceases to be just a name, instead becomes a symbol?
A major story of the early going, of course, pitcher injuries once again at the forefront.
Walker Buehler, who is now out with yet another Tommy John.
Jacob deGrom, he is going to need a second Tommy John surgery.
I went through this before, and I know what it takes to get back. So that's the goal.
On July 17, 1974, 31-year-old pitcher Tommy John of the Los Angeles Dodgers, already in his 12th big league season, took the ball against the Montreal Expos. He was 13-2, but in the third inning, he knew something was wrong.
Came stretch, came home, and right as I got to accelerate through, I felt this pain in my elbow that I've never felt before. I went, oh man, and the ball just kind of blooped up to the plate.
Leaving the field, he was met in the training room by team officials, teammates, even media. But also there, one man that would change his life and save his career.
I'm sitting there soaking my arm in ice, and Dr. Job said, come see me tomorrow, and we'll talk about it then.
Dr. Job was Dr. Frank Job, a Dodgers team consultant since 1964. Even without today's technology, he knew the injury was serious, and so too did his brand new patient.
You got to understand, 1974, there were no MRIs, no CT scans. The only way they could tell if you tore a ligament is hold the humerus down and open the elbow up like this, and I go, ah!
John had torn the ulnar collateral ligament in his elbow, at the time considered a career-ending injury. After rehab only proved unsuccessful, and with John's career hanging in the balance, Dr. Job landed on an idea that was as radical as it was desperate.
What it really is to take the ligament out of a forearm, either the side that he pitches with or the other side, and then put it into his elbow to replace the ligament that was torn.
People said, oh my God, you probably wrestled with this for a long time. No, there was no wrestling. If you wanted to play baseball again, you had to have the surgery and take the chance.
After surgery on September 25th, 1974, John endured a difficult, roughly year-and-a-half-long rehab. But the procedure worked. He ultimately threw more innings and won more games than he did before the surgery that would bear his name.
Tommy John going the distance. A brilliant job by Tommy John.
He finished with 288 career wins and over 2,200 strikeouts across 26 big league seasons.
Tommy John had one of the great comebacks in sports.
And 50 years later, the 18-month rehab timeline remains largely unchanged. So too does the uncertainty, no matter the resume.
It took me 18 months to recover from it, but just being away from the game. Like, I got drafted and got the surgery within 2 weeks, so just staying in the present moment was the hardest thing. Like, if you can learn to do that, you'll be just fine.
You have to have a good understanding of yourself and your body and say, okay, like, when I'm allowed to take this next step, I'm going to take that step and I'm going to push it to the point that my body can start to adapt and feel what I'm asking it to do, but also not re-injure anything. And that's the balancing act that happens for, 12 months.
In the last decade, there were more than 1,300 Tommy John surgeries performed on affiliated baseball players. That, of course, doesn't include the number of players who aren't affiliated with big league clubs, namely young players.
Guys are definitely throwing harder than they ever have. Even younger kids, they're throwing harder and harder. Guys are bigger and stronger. That can help prevent injuries or maybe lead to an injury. So there's a lot of things in it, but everyone's thankful that there's a surgery to come back.
It's a little alarming, the fact that it gets done so much, especially in young kids. But the reality is, an experimental procedure that a pitcher tried worked out.
A name. It might be our most valuable possession. This lefty gave his to the game. Those that followed not only share it, but carry it in the scars on their elbows and in their desire to pitch again. And it all traces back to one name, Thomas Edward John.
It's had a profound impact, extended careers, which is obviously the biggest impact.
Saved so many careers. Guys are able to come back and be themselves or even be better.
Second chance is always nice.
Thank you very much, Mr. John, for that amazing surgery that you took a chance on years ago, because it gave me a second chance.
Somebody had to do it, and I was the guy in the right spot, and thank God I had the right surgeon at the right time.
All right, I know MLB Network is the mouthpiece of the commissioner, but they put out some good stuff sometimes, and I thought that was a pretty good piece. Yeah, so Tommy John, Hall of Very Good. I would trade Harold Baines for Tommy John in the Hall of Fame if that were a thing that fans could do. So if anybody's listening and wants to make that trade there at the Hall of Fame, I guess I bless it. All right, the last Hall of Very Good player, Tommy A.G. 1966 Topps card here. This is actually, although it's a 1966 Rookies Star card, this is actually not his rookie card. He had a rookie card in the 1965 set as well, and although he was on the White Sox in 1965, his rookie card for 1965 is a Cleveland Indians card because he was traded by the Cleveland Indians to the Chicago White Sox in January 1965. This was part of a 3-team deal that was a kind of a fairly big deal. Kind of changed the landscape for a lot of American League teams starting in the 1965 season. And actually, Tommy John was part of that deal as well. Tommy John was traded also by the Cleveland Indians to the Chicago White Sox in this trade. Other players involved in the trade were John Romano, a pretty well-known catcher, Rocky Colavito, one of the better outfielders in the American League, Jim Landis, who was a kind of an RBI machine for both the White Sox and the Kansas City Athletics as his career went on. So a pretty big three-team trade put Tommy Agee on the Chicago White Sox starting in 1965. Another interesting trivia question. This one I don't know the answer to, but I'd be surprised if the answer isn't Tommy Agee. Who has the most seasons played in the major leagues before winning Rookie of the Year? I'd be surprised if Tommy Agee is not the answer, or at least tied for the answer, because he played in 1962, 1963, 1964, and 1965 before winning Rookie of the Year in 1966. So how does that happen? Well, you just don't play very much in each of those years. He had 55 at-bats in 3 years. 55 plate appearances in 3 different seasons for the Indians, and then 21 plate appearances for the White Sox in 1965, before playing in 160 games and getting 689 plate appearances in 1966 for the Chicago White Sox, winning Rookie of the Year as well as a Gold Glove in his rookie year. And that is pretty astounding. He unseated Carl Yastrzemski, and he unseated, hold on, I'm gonna get it here. Carl Yastrzemski won in 1965, and Tom Tresh, the New York Yankees outfielder, won in 1965. Agee and Oliva unseated the two of them in 1966. So to unseat 2 established Gold Glove winners, one of whom plays for the New York Yankees, was pretty, I would say, pretty impressive by Tommy Agee. And so, although he did not play for the White Sox all that long, he only played 2 full seasons as a starter for the White Sox. I'm including him as a Hall of Very Good White Sox player because he won Rookie of the Year. He's actually one of only 6 White Sox to win Rookie of the Year. The other 5 being Luis Aparicio, 1956, Gary Peters, 1963, Ron Kittle, 1983, Ozzie Guillen, 1985, and Jose Abreu in 2014. So he joins good company as a Rookie of the Year winner with the White Sox. But he's probably best known for his time with the Mets, and specifically his time with the 1969 World Series winning Miracle Mets. That was a year that he got 6th place in MVP voting. He batted .271, which was well above his career average of .255. He hit 26 home runs, which was a career high. He had 76 RBIs. And although he did not win a Gold Glove that year in the National League, he won it the next year, and certainly was a strong fielder. And so Tommy Agee gets the number 3 spot in the Hall of Very Good. Of the 3 that we're showing, he doesn't have any legitimate claim to the Hall of Fame. He's got a career WAR of 25.4. He definitely had some good seasons, but his really strong seasons were only about 4 really strong seasons between 1966 and 1970, and in between there in 1968 he had a very weak season. So although his peak was pretty good, his peak didn't last long enough to warrant serious Hall of Fame consideration. So he will stay firmly entrenched in the Hall of Very Good. But because he is most known for his 1969 World Series exploits, I'll show some actual baseball footage clips from his 1969 World Series Game 3, in which he hit a home run and arguably saved 5 runs with some great catches in center field, and wouldn't you know it, the Mets won that game 5-0. So he was almost single-handedly responsible for that win. Here we go.
with a drive into deep left center. Racing hard is A.J. What a grab! Tom A.J. saves 2 runs.
Tommy A.J. going all the way to the track. Look at the backhand stab with the glove. And now he'll have to break himself with the bare hand on the wall. A lot of white showing. Look at that ball.
Boy, he just had that one, Lindsey.
Count is 0-2. And it is a fly ball. It'll be tough to get to. A.G. is going, and A.G. makes a diving catch. He's out.
Now, this man has possibly saved 5 runs in this game. Watch it in slow motion. The wind is blowing out. Now, A.G. twice has clutched this ball in the webbing of his glove. Once against Hendricks for 2 on and 2 out. This time with the bases loaded and 2 out.
All right, so that does it for the Hall of Very Good White Sox players. I don't know why it is, but all of these VR submissions that I've done so far have been from hotel rooms. So it must be the best time to do VR submissions. Now, I've got to shout out 3 channels that are not eligible for the YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame. So I'll shout out a few that I've been enjoying. 2 of them are very new, kind of in the same vein as myself. One is Redneck Collector. That's REDNECK Collector, CLECTOR. He's been putting up content for about 5 months. Next is J Average Vintage Collector. You can find him at JAYAVG for Average Vintage Collector. He's been putting up content just for 1 or 2 months. And then I got to shout out my fellow White Sox collector, White Sox fan card collector. He's not quite as new. He's been putting out content for about 2 years. But all 3 are below the 3-year threshold for the YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame. So with that, Mark, appreciate you putting together this VR submission. I hope that I win that. Actually, you were giving away a White Sox card, Minnie Minoso. So I think I am destined. It is meant to be that I will be the winner of your VR contest. But even if I'm not, thanks for putting it together. And as always, collect what you love, flip what you like.